The chandelier above the dining table sparkled like a crown, casting a warm, golden glow over the polished mahogany. I had insisted on a family dinner that evening, wanting my parents to finally meet Omar formally. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a small acknowledgement of our love and the life we were building together. Instead, it became a stage for humiliation. Omar walked in quietly, his crisp white shirt and gentle smile making him look out of place in my parents' grand dining room. He carried a bouquet of lilies for my mother, an innocent gesture meant to bridge the growing gap between them. But the moment my mother laid eyes on him, the warmth of her smile froze. My father gave only a polite nod, as if he were preparing to conduct an interrogation rather than share a meal with family. From the first bite of the appetizer, the subtle attacks began. My mother's voice, sweet but cutting, carried over the clinking of silverware. "So, Omar, you're a teacher. That must be interesting. I hear teachers don't make much. How do you manage?" Omar's polite smile faltered, but he answered carefully, detailing his modest salary and how he managed their life with integrity. My father's gaze sharpened, and ambition. He asked, leaning back with a calculated air, "Do you plan to do anything more substantial in life?" I felt my hands clench beneath the table, nails digging into my palms. Omar tried to laugh lightly, but the ridicule kept coming. My mother mocking the small apartment we lived in, commenting on the odd hours he kept tutoring, implying he wasn't truly worthy of our family's name. Each word hit like a blade. Then came the final, cruelest jab. Swirling her wine as if to toast my shame, my mother said softly, "Everyone says you married beneath yourself, dear. I hope you can handle being in the shadow of someone who has achieved more." Omar rose, calm and composed. "Thank you for dinner. I think I'll leave you to your evening," he said, his voice even, but his eyes betrayed quiet hurt. He walked out, leaving me trembling, my parents frozen in disbelief, and the room suffocating in an awkward silence. That night, lying beside him, I tried to apologize. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, tears threatening to fall. Omar took my hand, squeezing it gently. "Don't ever let them make you feel small," he said. "What they see as a weakness is actually our strength." And in that moment I realized something vital. The pain was unbearable, but it had planted a seed of quiet fury, determination, and a promise. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting desire, it was coming. The morning after that disastrous dinner, the world seemed impossibly still, but inside me, everything had changed. The humiliation Omar had endured wasn't just a wound to his pride, it was a wound to me, to us. I expected anger, maybe bitterness, but what I saw instead was something extraordinary. Omar's calm, quiet dignity refused to bend under my parents' cruelty, and that calm began to stir something powerful inside me, a resolve. Word of the dinner had spread faster than I could have imagined. In our small town, news traveled like wildfire, especially the kind of scandal my parents had unintentionally created. But instead of shame, admiration for Omar grew. Teachers from the school where he worked, neighbors, even parents whose children had benefited from his tutoring, reached out to us. Small notes, flowers, and kind words began to arrive at our modest home. Each message, each gesture, was a reminder that Omar's worth was undeniable, and that the town recognized it far more than my parents ever could. I watched in awe as the people they had once dismissed as insignificant teachers, shopkeepers, students' parents spoke of him with admiration and respect. The quietest ones in our town were now his champions. Neighbors I barely knew came by to thank him for his patience, his dedication, the little things that mattered so much. For the first time, I realized that reputation wasn't about wealth or status. It was about integrity and heart. Meanwhile, my parents were growing restless. Invitations they had long taken for granted began shifting subtly, being redirected to Omar instead. Social gatherings where they once held influence now buzzed with talk of his accomplishments. They tried to call me repeatedly, demanding explanations, but I let the silence answer them. Let the town's recognition do the talking. Let it sting where words had failed. I began to see the cracks in their arrogance, the way their smiles faltered when someone mentioned Omar. At the grocery store, the butcher remarked, "Your husband sounds remarkable. Your parents must be proud." The words dripped like acid for them, but for me, they were sweet proof that humility and hard work were stronger than wealth and pretense. Omar never boasted, never sought attention, yet the world seemed to conspire on his behalf. It was astonishing to watch the quiet storm of his influence grow, unseen but unstoppable, gaining momentum with each act of kindness he had quietly performed over the years. And I realized revenge didn't always need to be loud or violent. Sometimes it was quiet, relentless, and far more devastating. As I watched him teach, helping his students with unwavering patience, I felt a surge of pride and a flicker of hope. The world would soon see that true strength wasn't measured by money or arrogance, but by character. And when it did, the reckoning for those who had humiliated him would be absolute. Weeks turned into months, and the ripples of that fateful dinner began to transform our lives in ways my parents could never have anticipated. Omar, quiet and unassuming, was slowly becoming the center of attention, not through arrogance or wealth, but through genuine admiration. Parents raved about his dedication, students spoke of him with pride. Even colleagues and town officials began seeking his insight on educational initiatives. My parents, meanwhile, were unraveling. Invitations that had once been theirs by default were being declined or quietly redirected to Omar. At charity events and local gatherings, my father's once commanding presence was now met with polite nods, while Omar was greeted with warmth, respect, and gratitude. The more they tried to assert control, the more obvious it became that their influence was slipping through their fingers. Then came the charity gala, an event my mother had painstakingly organized. She wanted to showcase Omar in front of the town's elite, believing that if she controlled the setting, she could salvage her family's reputation. She approached me with practiced charm, but I could see the desperation in her eyes. I agreed to host the dinner, but on my own terms. I quietly invited all the people who had quietly rallied behind Omar, parents, teachers, even some of my parents' friends who had long grown weary of their arrogance. I made sure Omar would be the star of the evening, without him needing to ask. When the night arrived, my parents were smug, expecting admiration and compliance. But the room shifted the moment Omar entered. Warm greetings, handshakes, and nods of respect rippled through the crowd. He didn't boast, he didn't flaunt success, he simply shared stories, small, heartfelt moments of triumph from his students, moments that revealed his integrity, patience, and unwavering kindness. One by one, attendees applauded. Conversations turned toward collaboration, mentorship, and admiration. By the end of the evening, my parents' smug smiles had faded into tight-lipped discomfort. Their attempts at control had been rendered meaningless by the truth. Omar's worth could not be denied, and it shone brighter than any social status or wealth. I watched him quietly, my heart swelling with pride. This was revenge, but it was elegant and understated justice served not with anger, but with dignity. The world had witnessed my husband's value, and it had humbled those who had tried to diminish him. That night, as we left the gala, Omar slipped his hand into mine and whispered, "Sometimes the quietest victories are the sweetest." I smiled, knowing he was right. The storm had passed, but its aftermath had reshaped everything. And for the first time, I truly understood the power of standing strong, of letting character speak louder than cruelty. Months had passed since that unforgettable dinner, and our lives had transformed in ways neither Omar nor I could have imagined. The quiet dignity he had displayed that night had blossomed into something far greater: respect, admiration, and influence throughout the town. Students thrived under his guidance, parents sought his counsel, and even the local council began consulting him on educational initiatives. Omar's name became synonymous with dedication, integrity, and quiet power. My parents, despite their wealth and social standing, felt the shift acutely. Invitations that once filled their calendar now bypassed them entirely, redirected toward Omar. When they tried to assert authority at social gatherings, they were met with polite nods or subtle dismissals. Their arrogance, which had once ruled the town's social circles, was no longer relevant. The world had quietly and decisively moved on, and Omar was at its center. I watched this transformation with a mixture of awe and pride. The man they had tried to humiliate had risen not through confrontation, not through vengeance, but through steadfast character and relentless kindness. Each time my parents attempted to reclaim their dominance, they only highlighted their own pettiness, while Omar's genuine compassion drew more people to him. One evening, as we walked through the town square, children ran to greet him with laughter and hugs. Parents approached, shaking his hand, expressing gratitude for the small yet profound ways he had touched their lives. Local business owners smiled and waved, their respect unmistakable. I squeezed Omar's hand, feeling the full weight of the journey we had endured together. "You were the storm I didn't know we needed," I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. Omar smiled, calm and knowing. "No, love, we were the storm together. Sometimes the quietest ones make the loudest impact." The sweet victory wasn't in witnessing my parents' humiliation. It was in seeing Omar rise above it, in watching his integrity shine brighter than cruelty, and in knowing that justice had come. Naturally, revenge had taken the form of recognition, admiration, and respect, the kind that cannot be faked or bought. It was irreversible, undeniable, and infinitely satisfying. That night, lying together under the soft glow of our modest home, I realized the true meaning of triumph. Power, wealth, and status are fleeting. Character and kindness endure. My parents had tried to diminish us, but the universe had rewarded patience, love, and integrity. And Omar's quiet strength had not only restored our dignity, it had elevated us above the petty arrogance that had once threatened to crush us. In that moment I understood, revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, and when it does, it lasts forever.